Okay, we are testing a little bit. We're having some technical difficulties, but I feel McSweeney's, we just got it. So we are ready to rock and roll with the Stephen Dixon tribute. Hi everybody. I see so many people joining us. We are trying to make sure we can add in our wonderful guests today because we have a lot of really exciting stuff with the Stephen Dixon tribute. He would laugh. Steve would have a laugh that I just called it Stephen King tribute. But such are the times. We've definitely had some glitches today, but thank goodness. I want to thank Dan Weiss because he knew what the problem was with our connection. And some of you guys, I just want to apologize, the reason that some of this stuff is glitchy. I'm glad you're here, Matt. I'm hoping Antonia, Sophia, you're here. Many of you guys might not know, but Instagram keeps having these updates, and they've had some really weird updates lately. And so they've been wanting everyone to do reels, so it's causing chaos with like how we all come up. I've been doing lives and bookstore events all during this pandemic, and it's been so lovely, but there's glitches always. This time, though, it was really challenging because it wouldn't let me use the McSweeney's account, and then Dan, we were trying to get it on my own personal account, and it was a mess. So here we are, yay, thank you. We're going to wait just another second because I want to make sure we have everybody here. This is such a special night. I can't even tell you all. We're celebrating, this new issue of McSweeney's, and specifically, this little box here is making me so happy because it's Quartet of Stories by Stephen Dixon, then introduced by me, Porochista Khapour. I'm so honored because Stephen Dixon was one of my most beloved mentors of all time. I was at the Johns Hopkins program in 2002, 2003, very young when I got there, just like 23 or so, basically a 9/11 refugee after years of being an Iranian refugee, and I decided, hi Sophia, okay great, and Antonia, yay, everyone's here. I'm going to add you guys in just a second. I'm going to make sure we've got everyone. Anyways, I got to Johns Hopkins, and it was the most frightening experience of my life in many ways, and I've written about it in a Substack entry I did in November 2019. It's called Another Red Spot. My Substack is free, so you can just Google it if you want. I've put it on my social media. And I wrote it very spur of the moment on my way back to Baltimore to give a reading there. And I was thinking of Steve so much, and I found out that he had just passed away. And it was just very, very, very emotional for me, of course, because there's not a piece of writing I do that I don't think of what would Steve think. And there's not even many life decisions I make that I don't think, what would Steve think? Because he gave me the best advice of my life, and it continues to make more and more sense. Now I'm 43, and it continues. So I just feel so lucky and so blessed. The thing that's so exciting tonight is we have Antonia and Sophia, who are his daughters, and their mother is also really amazing, beloved member of the Johns Hopkins family and a brilliant scholar. And we also have Matt Petty, who was very close to Steve too, and his biographer. And so I will hopefully shut up and tell you more about all this. I'll read just a little bit of my thing, but I want to make sure we can add them all so they can be in the room with us and we can rock and roll there. My dog is on the thing. Okay. We've gotten really lovely instructions from McSweeney's, but we have different types of Instagram that we're setting up, so I want to make sure we can add everybody. Hi Joseph, how are you? The adding on my phone is okay. I'm inviting to join some people, so let's hope. Sophia, I am bringing you into the room. Let's see if we can get Sophia in here. Can assemble our cast, and each of them wants to share something, and then, you know, we can open up to questions and all that. Ah, they're both in the same room. Sophia and Antonia, how are you guys?
Good.
It's taking a second to modulate. Can everybody, okay. I'm getting a little bit of buzz, but okay, there we are. Good. How are you?
Doing all right. All things considered, it's really nice to be here tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really an honor to be talking to you all, because it's just, we who've been, you know, one of the reasons I was so honored to be there is I'd been reading Stephen Dixon's work for so long, and I felt like I got to know you through his stories so often, and I know it was a representation of you. Of course, he's a fiction writer, you know, and that was something we often discussed, because I often thought about how do I put my family in there and everything. And I think so many readers of Stephen Dixon, and also his students, have been hearing about you in all sorts of ways. And I know one thing that really touched me was he always said, I will not allow any stories in my class with harm done to young women. And like, as his students, we were always like, wow, that's so cool. Why? And I remember his answer. He was like, because I have daughters and I love them very much. And I still get goosebumps when I think about that, because it's so rare to hear that from like, for whatever reason, especially from a male professor. It felt to me really, really noteworthy. I'd never heard someone, and then we talked about that a lot. So it's just like such an honor. Maybe you guys, should I bring in Matt first, or do you want to talk first, or should we go through our order, or what do you guys feel like? Dan is letting me take some liberties here because we had some technical issues. So now I don't have to bring each of you independently, I think. So you're now together, so we don't have the issue of 4 people. But we can just add Matt first. Can you guys hear me okay? The sound is cut out on you. Let me bring in Matt while you guys, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you right now. People in the comments, can you guys tell us if you can hear them, if it's just my phone, or, okay, Sophia went, so they're gonna log back in, I'm sure. So let me bring, technical difficulties will be seen as the charm of this era, I'm sure. Let me see if I can invite Matt, and then I'll bring them back in too. I can pretend we're doing a little, this is, Steve would find this really, really charming, I think. I hope. He'd just be like, what's wrong with everybody here? Okay, Matt, I cannot. Matt, can you request to be in the live? Okay, I'm getting Sophia in. I already hear sound.
We're back, sorry.
No problem. I was gonna say, well, why don't we have you turn it over to you, and I'm gonna look to see in my emails how we can bring Matt in too. Matt, if you hear us, if you can just request to join, I'm gonna turn things over to Sophia and Antonia for a second, and then we can add you in too.
All right, sounds good. Did you want to say what you were saying about? Oh no. Okay. Okay. I wrote a little statement, and I'll read it, and then should we read the story?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be so great. Thank you both.
Awesome. Okay. So I'd also like to thank McSweeney so much. We're so pleased by this volume. It's a real comfort and joy to receive this testament to the fact that there continues to be vibrant interest in Stephen Dixon's new work that keeps him present in the world and to us. Our dad loved McSweeney's. He was awed and proud of their editions of I and the End of I. I have absolute certainty, as I've written to Claire, that he would be thrilled, delighted to be featured in McSweeney's Quarterly 63, alongside this group of incredible writers and artists, and with the beautiful portrait by Hannah Something. Thank you to Dan for setting this up. And these 4 new stories are from 2 new collections. Matt Petty, our father's biographer and dear friend, selected these stories. My dad would tell us that Matt was a blessing in his life, and this has been true for Sophia and myself as well. I want to thank Porochista for hosting, for reading, and for her lovely and moving introduction to the stories. I first read a version of this introduction as an essay a few days after our dad died, and we were shy and excited to meet Porochista at the tribute reading that Joey Grantham set up at Murmur. Porochista's essay was one of the many incredible tributes to my dad and his work that Sophia and I read after he passed away. These tributes in all forms were a source of great solace. It was so meaningful to know that Stephen was so deeply loved and mourned by so many people, and that he would continue to live not only with us, not only with us and his blood family, but with his community and his writing family. I'm reminded in Porochista's introduction and in this event that our dad did relate to his community as a family. He felt at home in his writing. He made so many close, amazing friends through his writing, and he did not hide or obscure himself in his life or in his work. I want to thank all of my dad's readers and say how meaningful it is to me and was to me and has been to know that you're out there. To read my dad's story after watching him read so many times in my life is bittersweet. I miss him so much, but I'm honored and glad and moved to share his work with you.
Thank you oh my gosh. Thank you. I've been promising myself not to cry, so I'm trying not to.
We'll do our best.
Yeah, oh, thank you. That was so beautiful.
Oh, thanks. It's really an honor to be here with you.
Well, it's such an honor for me, so thank you so much. Do you want to read the piece now, or do you want me to read a little bit of the interview?
Yeah.
Whatever you want. I can do it anyway. And I'm still working on Matt. If you can send your request, like there's a little button that might say send request. It seems like it's working that way the best. If you can send it through there.
Yeah. Why don't you read some and then we'll read.
Perfect. Okay. I'll just read the very beginning. And so it was a real challenge to how to write about a person who's not just your teacher, but like, you're a literary hero in so many ways. So when I was working on this, I was just completely overwhelmed and scared and haunted and all those things, because I just hoped that it would be something that he would also like. And I'll never know that, but he always knew if I was trying my best, And so that is like what I hope that, I really believe in ghosts and spirits more than ever this pandemic, as I've lost like a lot of writers in my life. So, Steve can let us know what he thinks in his own way. So there's this introduction. They did such a beautiful job. It's like this whole issue of McSweeney is just really, really magical, full of just great writing. So the introduction, it just begins like this. Life versus art. This was the concept that hovered around our heads, us young aspiring writers in the then second best writing program in the country, Johns Hopkins Writing Seminars. The question was fashionable at the time. You could be the writer who had discipline and craft and skills, or you could be the writer who had really lived, whose adventures were the anecdotes that made up intricate plots, whose characters were based on a cast so real they were called larger than life. Our program was split between these camps, and the question, if it was a question even, was never resolved. I recall regularly staying out all night with my set of loud, messy, rebellious types while other students were back in their apartments by dinner time. We found this amusing but easy to understand. They were in the camp that chose art, we had chosen life. Different roads, that was all. Where the hell would you get an idea like that? Dichotomies? When even? I mean, really, you were asking, where do I stand? My most beloved professor and mentor, Stephen Dixon, asked me in his office one day when I brought up the idea of the two camps, thinking I was really onto something. But his face quickly let me know that was not the case. You're kidding, right? He went on. Yes, I lied sweetly with a tight smile. Good, he grumbled. It always felt like there was an invisible cigarette he was taking a long drag of between his fingers. Dixon was constantly teetering into exasperation, but never so much that it felt like resentment, thank goodness. The last time I saw Stephen Dixon was 17 years ago, back when I was a student, and I don't even remember the exact moment. I had no idea he was going to retire just 4 years after I left. I think I imagined him existing forever in exactly that form, as our forever mentor, sighing and groaning and rolling his eyes, somehow always still lovingly. Did we have a proper goodbye even? The night before our graduation, a group of the worst troublemakers in our cohort and I, plus my visiting hometown best friend, this goes on and on and on. I'll spare you guys. We had a wild night that night. But the point is that we were suffering so much in so many ways. We were, many of us, just in and out of Johns Hopkins psych constantly and on so many meds. And some of the meds we basically treated recreationally because we were just so depressed and miserable in so many ways. I mean, this was very shortly after 9/11 too. It was a really difficult time. And Steve not just saw us, but found really amazing ways to reach us so that we didn't derail our lives. And I think he could see when people were self-destructive. So there's an anecdote in here that I often think about, and I wrote about in that other Substack, of like me crying in his office after I'd attempted suicide. And I was embarrassed to tell him that too. And I hadn't told a lot of people about that. It was in a really beautiful part of Baltimore, Guilford Park. And I just felt like, what am I even doing? You know, what was that about? And Steve just handed me, he sat and he really listened to me and he really heard me. And he just loved a story of mine that then too. That was a big triumph. And he took an orange he was holding and he ripped it apart in a way I've never seen someone do exactly. It was like two perfect halves. And he gave me the other half of the orange. And he was like he could just tell I probably hadn't had water or eaten anything in ages. And he's like, go ahead. And we just both sat there, I remember, in silence for a while. And I was just crying into this half of an orange, just bawling. And it felt like heaven. And it was so nourishing. And then he basically, for another hour or two, helped me understand what my life might look like and why I should be a writer. And he knew I was a novelist when I didn't know that. So anyways, that was my thing there. And I think about that moment especially all the time, though I think about many moments with him. So yeah, thank you. Do you guys want to read the part of the story? And then we're going to continue to try. I think Matt, people are saying you probably need to exit the reading and rejoin to send the request. It's not showing in our thing. So you can, if you exit and enter McSweeney's, I think, you're already in the right page, Matt. So.
All right, we'll get started and hopefully Matt can jump in.
Yeah,
because I know
we're going to keep trying. We're going
to. He wanted to talk about this story that we're reading from.
Oh yeah, well, we can do it in that reverse order. It can be like
good.
yeah.
I wanted to your introduction and that essay, it put so clearly in my mind my dad's office, that attic office, like with the slanted walls and the big desk, and it's just like such a magical place in my mind too, imbued with like so much, clearly just like it was just such a important place.
Oh yeah, it was really like, to me, the safest place in that like whole school and that whole city. Still for me, it feels like if I could just be in there for like 5 more minutes, so many of my current problems would be over. You know,
I remember the smell of it.
Yeah,
sort of the old book smell.
Yeah, it was amazing.
To make sure you get in front of the camera.
Okay. We're gonna read from Finding an Ending, the last story in this selection. And we're kind of gonna trade off and not read the whole thing, but parts. Right. I can't seem to finish this story I've been writing. I've tried many times, so try another. That's the only way to do it. And if that doesn't work, then another time and another time, till you've got it. You're so close to ending this story. End it already. Add it to the collection of interlinked stories you've been writing and start a new one. She says, so I'll see you, and heads for the door. Wait, he says, and she says, what? And he says, you forgot. Forgot what? Her keys, wallet, shoulder bag, a book, her briefcase filled with what? What does it matter what it's filled with? Just her briefcase. Then, or better start again. This happens. I'm not worried. Somewhere out there there's the right ending. It always comes. Or 49 times out of 50 it does. I just don't want all I've written so far of the story to go to waste. So I'm going to skip ahead a few pages. So he's kind of recounting the story he's writing about meeting his wife while also recounting the actual story of how they met.
And they just spent their first summer in Maine.
Oh yes, they just spent their first summer in Maine. Okay. His mother said when he was driving her to the Bangor airport that she felt that Laura, the woman's name in this story, was like a daughter to her. You couldn't have done better. Don't do anything foolish to lose her. You'll regret it your whole life. I know, he said, and I won't. It really looks good. She makes me so happy. It's hard for me to even say that without tearing up. I think it's going all the way. That's what I like to hear, his mother said. During the drive back to New York with Laura, they spoke about what a wonderful summer it's been, the two of them together, and also all the work they got done. She said she never got along so well with any man for 2 months straight, and that includes her ex-husband before he was her husband, and at a time when she was madly in love with him. He said, same here, never a summer like this or any 2 months straight with a woman. Maybe not even 2 weeks. It's been a dream summer. The cottage, you, your cats. The drive took 10 hours. She sometimes took his hand for a few seconds while she drove or squeezed his thigh, and he did the same to her while he was driving. Lots of loving smiles between them too in the car. And conversation. It was all good, and for an hour or two they just listened to a book on tape. She said something like, I'm all out of talk and not tired enough to nap while you drive. Mind if I play one of the Hardy tapes? He said something like, not my favorite writer, but go ahead. Anything you want to make the trip go faster, and maybe it'll put you to sleep as it would me if you were driving. Now that's mean, she said. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to be. Forget I said it. I don't remember which Hardy novel it was. Maybe it was never mentioned. She had the complete set of them on tape and also the collected poems. He assumed she listened to the tape when she was alone in the car because she never played them when he was with her or even suggested she'd like to. The point is, it was a very pleasant ride back to New York other than for that one Hardy remark. He knew Hardy was one of her favorite writers. They stopped for lunch at a roadside seafood stand in Massachusetts and shared a lobster roll and fish burger and agreed they weren't as good as the ones at the Fishnet in Blue Hill and the Fisherman's Friend in Stonington. So what changed things when they got back to New York? She must have been thinking during the trip of breaking up with him or thought about it long before, at least a few days before, while they were still in Maine. And as far as he can remember, acting lovey-dovey to each other, but never gave a hint or sign near where I was unable to finish it, I think. Yes.
I'm picking up right there. She drove them to his apartment building on the Upper West Side, their first stop in the city. This was the arrangement they made in the car. First his place, then his parents', then hers. He never understood why and never asked her, or if he did, he forgets what she said, why she didn't say goodbye to him for good while her car was double parked in front of his building. It certainly would have been more convenient for him than to have to take the subway home after they got to her apartment. Maybe because she needed him to help bring her things up to her apartment while one of them stayed in the car if she couldn't immediately find a parking spot near her building or her parents'. That makes sense. Though her parents' building always had a doorman in the lobby who would have looked out for her car double parked in front when she went upstairs. Her building also had a doorman, but she had so many more things to bring up to her apartment than he did to his, one of them being a very heavy electric typewriter and also a carton of books. He got out of the car, suspecting nothing, and brought his portable typewriter and other stuff he had with him in Maine to his apartment. Clothes, manuscripts, writing supplies, flashlight, a few books, and jars of blueberry and raspberry jam for his mother and sister and a couple of friends, and also to give as Christmas gifts when that holiday comes around. I'll be right down, he said. I just have to pee and drink a glass of water. She said, try to make it fast. It's been a long trip for the cats, and they're getting antsy in their carriers. Next, they drove to her parents' apartment building near Riverside Drive, about 10 blocks north of his street, and she brought their 2 cats back to them. He stayed in the car while she went upstairs. Then they drove to her building in the Morningside Heights neighborhood and brought the carrier with her 2 cats, all of them from the same family, mother and 2 daughters and son, to her apartment, along with lots of other things of hers. He actually helped her get everything of hers into the elevator, and she went up with it, and he rushed back to the car so she wouldn't get a ticket. The doorman had said he couldn't spend too much time looking out for the car. While she was in her apartment or getting her things off the elevator and into her apartment, he drove around for about 15 minutes looking for a parking space. He finally found one right in front of her building. It just opened up as he was passing her building for about the 5th time, and it was good for 2 days. How lucky can you get, he probably thought, or something like it. Once in her apartment, he had a key. He said, "Well, that's done, and everything went so smoothly since we started out. Great journey, gorgeous weather, not one traffic tie-up, and perfect landing. I got a parking spot right in front of your building, and it's good till 11 a.m. Wednesday. What better way to end the best 2 summer months I ever had?" "I'm glad," she said, but after her face had changed. He means her expression. It had suddenly got so serious. He was expecting a smile from his last remark, maybe even a kiss. He said, "Anything wrong?" "Why do you ask?" "Your face," he said. "You seem worried about something. You all right?" "Would you want to sit down and have some tea with me while we talk?" "Something is wrong," he said. "It's about me. I don't like it." "It's true," she said. "I hate spoiling your good mood and this nice day and so on, but this has to be said. So come on, out with it. You've already indicated it's no good. I did something you didn't like that I'm unaware of? Or I'm aware of it, though I can't for the life of me think what it could be. But you think I don't want to be reminded of it?" "No," she said. "Your parents in Maine? But that was so long ago, and I thought it all went well with them." "It did. They had a wonderful time and think very highly of you. It's just that I've been thinking, but doing a lot of thinking about it, because I know you're not going to like it. The cats? You don't think I'm nice enough to them? And you feel, because as you once said, they're part of the package, that they'll never get along with me? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be joking. I wish you wouldn't. But if you think it makes you feel better, since I'm sure you know by now what it is I want to tell you."
And picking up from that, I grabbed this story off my work table. In the unfinished stories folder, no, why bother? I'll never get back to it. There are other possible stories in the folder that I'll also never go back to or look at again, other than maybe the first page or 2, and then probably dump. I tear the story in half and dump the pieces into the paper recycling bag in the kitchen. I take a walk. I mow the grass. I take my pills. I feed the cat. I play with him a little while with a long strip of toilet paper. I drink a glass of water. I work out with weights. I run in place. I take a shower. I sit on the toilet and pee. I read today's newspaper while I have a couple of Bloody Marys. I make a sandwich. I eat half of it and throw the other half away. I drink a glass of wine while I sit on the porch and look out its windows. I watch a fox walk by. I stand up and wave my arms and yell, "Get away, get away!" I take one bite of a carrot and put the rest of it back in the refrigerator. I drink another glass of wine while I sit in the living room and listen to a Baroque oboe concerto on the radio. I lock the doors and turn off all the house lights. I feel my way to the bedroom in the dark and turn on my bed lamp. I undress and get into bed. I get out of bed and brush my teeth and rinse my mouth with mouthwash and spit it out and clean the sink with my nail brush. I pee. I read in bed. I look at my watch. I shut off the light and lie back in bed. I think, why would you want to write another breakup story anyway? That could be the problem. You've done so many. They've for a long time been repeating themselves. You've for a long time been repeating yourself. There's nothing new for you to write about them. Face it, you've exhausted the subject. The subject doesn't excite you anymore. Because you've exhausted it and you've got to be excited by what you write. If you had thought about this before, you probably never would have written the last 2 or 3 of them. Is that so? That's so. I adjust the pillows behind my head. I pull the covers till they reach my neck. Tomorrow try to write an altogether different story was the last thought I had before I fell asleep. I wake up in what seems like a few hours. I turn on the light and look at my watch. Almost 3 hours exactly. I take my notebook off the night table, put on my glasses, and write down the last thought I had before I fell asleep. Maybe it'll turn into the opening line to the first draft of a new story. You never know what's going to follow it and what it might lead to till you sit at the typewriter and type it out. I write that thought down also, type it out to write it out, and put the notebook, glasses, and pen back on the night table and shut off the light. I turn over on my left side and close my eyes. The cat jumps onto the bed and lies on my feet.
So it's so lovely to hear you guys read it. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for doing that. It's like one of the things that I often think about is like, I wish that I had heard him. I think I heard him once give a reading of his own work, but I always had a feeling, what do you guys think of this? I had a feeling they didn't really enjoy giving readings often. Did he? Did it depend on the audience, do you think?
I think that he did enjoy it for a while. He began to enjoy it less and less. Yeah. And kept declaring that each reading was his last reading for many years. But I have memories as a younger child of him seeming to really enjoy, he would read mostly very funny stories. Yeah. And really enjoyed making people laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could be a really performative.
Mm-hmm. Especially. Yeah, that's nice. It was like, oh, I'm trying to, by the way, Matt, I'm hearing you that the one thing that actually I am wondering if that was a ghost here, was my computer completely shut down in the weirdest way while you guys were reading, and then came up just at the end. So, and I'm having problems with my phone and computer, but I've never seen it do what it just did. So that was interesting. For those of you guys who maybe don't know, for one of the reasons some of us who were his students were hesitant to reach out to him via email, he was reaching out sometimes via email with people. But like, for instance, my cohort, a lot of us have talked about how we were hesitant because he would say he didn't really love to communicate via email. So we would try things like try letters that went with him, but we were always so respectful of his boundaries, not because he was mean or whatever, he'd get mad at you if you made a mistake. In fact, he was so forgiving if you made a mistake with stuff. It's just that I don't think that feeling of awe ever went away with us with him. And sometimes he would even just kind of make fun of us for being so overly formal with him at times. And he'd just be like, what are you doing? And I'd just be apologizing for 10,000 things. And he'd be just like, okay, let's just like deal with wherever. So, but it never stopped, that feeling for me at least. And I think a lot of my friends in that cohort I've talked to felt the same.
Yeah, he had I think initially also had a very real aversion to email, but yeah, a love-hate relationship towards the end. Yeah, and especially love-hate towards the computer, like a lot of hate. Matt wrote in the comments that our dad did not like giving readings, maybe ever. Maybe my childhood memory was fabricated.
Well, I think that's the thing too. It's like the day you caught him too sometimes, right? There would be like a different sense of this. Like I felt like when he brought in John Barth and Robert Khapour to our class, we got to see this other side of him. Like he, of course, I still remember before both Barth and Khapour came, he had like different disclaimers about them to tell us about his relationship. And it wasn't like gossip so much as like, if this happens, don't be too freaked out, or if this happens, or and it was always, we understood why he ended up saying this stuff. Matt sent me a thing, I'm just seeing in the email. Matt, I'm going to still try to get you in. If you could log out and log back in, we do have time to bring you back in. So don't worry. We get an hour on Instagram Live before it cuts off, and we can save. So don't panic. But it says to read, so it looks like I can read your thought here. So it said, so glad Antonia and Sophia chose the story because it's quintessential Stephen Dixon. It's a story that's about a non-story that really is a story, but not the one you started with. The story starts out with the narrator saying, I can't seem to finish the story I've been writing, then goes on to manifest, and then talk about the stuckness. Then the story really tells the story it can't tell because it's too true to be believably real. After musing on the history of being stuck, sorry guys, Queens Boulevard. After musing on the history of being stuck, the narrator tries again, gets stuck again, tears up the story we've been reading. It turns out that it's all about loss, that the narrator can't finish a story about breakup. The breakup is not lost on the reader. A story about a loss is a fresh loss, and now the narrator details his life without a story to write, and right away we notice the shift to short, simple sentences reflecting a monotone life. I take a walk. I mow the grass. I take my pills. I feed the cat. I drink a glass of water. As the narrator closes his eyes, ending the day, the cat jumps onto the bed and lies at his feet. We recognize the cat at the return as the return of the loved one, lying at his feet to comfort him and populate his dreams for the next day of storytelling, or is it the end of storytelling? And now at the end of the story, remember the title, Finding an Ending. Has the narrator found an end to the story, or has the story found an end to the narrator? It's like Dixon has taken the narrative structure and uses it to play 3D chess. We get the feeling the writer is arguing with what he's written. So well said, Matt. Yeah, that's...
Thank you, Matt.
It's brilliant and like a very good, you know, it's again, like as one of his, like, I would say like mentees is really how you felt like as a student at that point that Johns Hopkins, before it became an MFA. So we were still like the last of the MA. We were a very small group. I felt like it's still so like, it's not that it's scary to interpret his work, but he taught me that the intention of the author is so important. So even now as a book critic, I go through so much pains to like channel what I think the author wanted. And so that, of course, becomes, I really appreciate having someone else say this, because it's so intense to, I think even as a writer, when I think about this, it's like, it is so intense to think, why did we write these stories at this time? Why? Steve would often tell us he wrote a story a day. And he was very, like, he would sometimes say it was like this division between fiction and nonfiction was just really pedestrian and boring, and why did people talk about it? And I wonder if he still felt this later in life. Do you guys think he did, or
between fiction and nonfiction? I think, he very much considered his writing fiction, and I remember him talking about that very emphatically. Matt might remember that too, but I think that, yeah, I wonder, for him fiction was, I think, a lot about imagination and formal experimentation, and I'm just thinking of what you said in your introduction so well, that there was no division between art and life. I think that the story we read speaks to that.
Yeah.
Too. The way truly, like, the two stories, the real and the fiction, are woven together. But then also this movement between different kinds of memory, like the memory of a big event in your life and the memory of sort of each minute minute that passes, being kind of given equal weight and equal texture.
That's so well put. Do you feel like a question? I know I hate bringing these questions on you, because I was hoping that when we did our technical check, I could ask you those, but so don't answer it if you don't feel like you don't want to answer it. But a question that's always been in my mind, again, I tried to get to this at the beginning, but I keep trying to rephrase it in my head in a very Dixonian way, I guess. I'm in a loop right now. How often did you feel like Steve like shared how he was writing about you, and did you guys feel a part of his process, or did you have different feelings at different times about how you wanted to be in the stories, or can you talk to that at all?
Yeah. I think it definitely like changed for me throughout time. I remember as a kid going to readings and watching him read and listening to him talking about like having the character having daughters, and it would feel like very exciting. And then in my 20s, I asked him like not to include me in his stories anymore, in sort of like a big rebellious move. Right. And then like 2 years later, I was like, you can include me as a second daughter in your stories again. And he was like, too late. But then he did it anyway. He was just messing. Yeah. So it's changed. It's definitely like there are moments when it is has felt like difficult and challenging and hard to read. I think some stories I just can't read, especially ones about our mom being sick. But then like since he has died, when I read some of these stories where, you know, the daughters say something that we might have said to him, it's like feels so great and like brings me very close to him. So yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of amazing. Sophia, did you want to add to that, or do you feel like, yeah, it's an intense question. I think it's always like a conversation I have a lot with my students, and it's a conversation I have with different writers, and I think myself different eras of like how I've represented actually my dad, because my dad is a big figure in my writing, and I've had different moments, I've had different feelings, and eventually somebody said in a review, he's like, well, you've written about your dad in fiction only, and I said, no, I've written about him in nonfiction and fiction. And in fact, my first novel, it was so real that the real address of my home was in it until they sent me proofs, and I realized I had to change it. And so it's just it's a very, I remember one of the books that really got me obsessed with his work was Interstate. And one of the thoughts I had when I read that, because so much of it has to do with his biggest fear. And he talked to me about this, I remember several times, because I brought up Interstate a lot. And I said, you know, and I don't want to give too much. It's a weird book to talk about because it's kind of like front loaded, the spoiler in the catalog copy. If you guys haven't read it, Interstate's amazing. But so I'm not giving it away exactly, but the phobia of losing your children is treated in many different stylized ways, and some non-stylized ways actually in that book. But I remember thinking, this dad loves his children so much. Like, this is to me like the greatest father. Like, and that was something that was really important to me when he called me and basically told me he wasn't sure my writing was good enough to be in the program. And in fact, he later even told me in a really lovely way, like, I loved his honesty. He said one of the reasons I didn't get a fellowship to be there, you know, I had most of the students got this teaching fellowship, and I had to catch up and do a winter intersession course to have a teaching experience there. I said to him, I felt hurt because everybody knew who got all the fellowships, and I was one of the only people that didn't get this teaching fellowship. And he said, oh, that was based on your GRE scores. Yours were really horrible. And I said, I know they were. And I told him why. I said, they were bad because I got a good math score, actually. I didn't do well in verbal, but it was because I was just panicked weeks after 9/11. I didn't even know what a GRE was. And so I went to take the GRE. I just thought, I have to leave New York. Like, hopefully I'll get into some grad school, you know? And it was really disastrous. And when he heard that from me, I think he was like touched that I just said it that way. And he was like, oh, it's okay though. You can like get teaching experience in these other ways. But he often also just told me something that he's told a lot of students is that, why don't you just not teach? It's great, but it's a lot of work. Just be a bartender or be a cab driver. And I thought of that so much during the pandemic. Did he tell you guys things like that? Because you guys have amazing careers too, in very like exciting professions.
He certainly expressed his ambivalence about MFA programs, but was pretty, he wanted us to get real world experience. But he didn't dissuade us from the MFA. So.
Yeah. I think that was the cool thing, because he kind of knew what all of it was like. He'd lived so many lives, and then he'd really heard his students and his colleagues too. He saw everyone so deeply. So he managed to understand all sorts of people from all different backgrounds in so many real ways. So when he gave you advice, it really made sense, you know, and he didn't stay in your way, but he wanted to make sure you understood what that way was. So it's kind of weird. He felt like as I'm talking to you guys right now, I'm realizing, like, in a sense, I felt like his child more than anything. And I feel really, like, amazed. That was why, if you remember when at the memorial I met you guys, I was just so, like, I couldn't even say hi properly, and I was so excited to meet you. But it was, like, I think that was a feeling a lot of us had, too, was, like, he was, like, the ultimate, like, amazing dad, you know, that and I don't know many creative writing teachers even today that watch out for their students like that, you know. I think it's pretty it's pretty rare.
He really was beloved. I went to Hopkins for a year and a half as an undergrad, and he like he really I mean, I saw it growing up too, you know, he would like spend hours in just like with student manuscripts. He really cared, even though at the end of the day he was like, I just want to write, you know, but I think he there was something about him that was like really well suited to being a professor. And
Yeah.
He must have been a really good dimension, right? Because I could imagine his day. He was writing and then like being an amazing like dad and caretaker and husband and all those things and friend to amazing writers. And then I would think that was like, you know, I mean, obviously knowing the difficulties of being at Hopkins on so many levels, right? Like there was a moment where I was going to teach there and I thought, you know, it's not going to be easy. Just like, and then I had a different fellowship, so I couldn't do it anyways. But I think that it seemed to me that he really did also love it. And he would kind of let us know that too. It's like, you know, like he would, because when we would be like, oh my God, we don't want to like get in your way or anything. And like the story of mine that became my first novel, the story Spectacle that I did for him, he was just so attached to that story being like my first novel. And then I worked with Alice McDermott on my fellowship here. And this was a fellowship that only existed briefly there called the Eliot Coleman Fellowship. And it was like I guess Alice, they picked who they were going to work with. And I think Alice had picked me because she ended up being my thesis advisor because they went by the alphabet. And I loved her too. She was amazing. They worked really well together. But he still talked to me a lot about it. And he was just like, this is going to be your first novel. Like, this is the one. And he was really fixated on my relationship with my father. And to this day, I think he's the only person who's ever understood my pretty difficult relationship with my father. And maybe one of the only people I felt safe to talk about that with, because it wasn't this American thing of like, oh, your dad is trash. Or the other thing of like, oh, your dad is like this, you know, he didn't make those judgments, let's just say. And so that felt to me really life-saving in how I continued to be a writer with very personal subjects. Matt, I'm still trying to get you in there. You don't want to log out and come back in? Is that causing you? You don't have to. We can find another way to get you in at a different time too. I want to also make sure we're answering any questions. You know, there was a bunch, or I'm trying to look at everything that's coming in.
I wish Matt could chime in.
I know.
I know he would have so much to say about our dad's relationship with his own father. And yeah.
Maybe we can do a part 2. We can tell, if you guys are up for it, there could be a part 2 with McSweeney's where we bring him in and like talk about his process with us. Oh, he's trying, right?
Matt says he keeps trying.
Well, what I can also offer is on my personal account too, I could do a thing, and McSweeney said they can advertise it through theirs too. So we could do another follow-up thing where if you guys are willing and you have the time, then we can bring him in. Because I know there's a lot of interest, especially like so much of my students, they're like, how does it work to be a biographer? How does that, you know, what are the Dixon moment?
Yeah, I think that would be great too.
Yeah.
I think we can.
If Matt is up for it.
Matt, if you're up for it, we can bring you in at another time. I know McSweeney's has been really great about like expressing that, and they've just given a lot of different people space. I think it's really worth these days. I've been telling people it's really important to celebrate these writers because, you know, writers have a life, obviously, like everybody else. They're mortal, but their legacies go on and on and on, and people learn from them forever. You know, there were so many amazing authors who are no longer alive that were models for Steve and for us, that he passed on to us. And we very much thought of them as like very alive in the room when we talked about them. And so I guess that's one of the things in this period of really unbelievable grief for so many people. I think one thing that's helped me is thinking about writers and writing and how we have their work. And there are times when I was going back and reading a lot of Steve's work during this period, which Matt so beautifully, he gave me some, as he was cleaning out things, I think with you guys' permission, he gave me a few of the books that were extras in his collection, and I lost it when that package came. I just cried for, I don't know, the longest time, and I just felt like this was so precious to me, and I kept rereading them, and it just felt like he was there, because it's also, that's the other thing, his voice was his voice, you know, that's how he sounded. And if you, I wish there was a way his ghost could really appear for a second here too, and have all of you here. Luckily with the internet, many of you guys, if you haven't heard him, you can access his work online in many different ways, interviews, readings.
Yeah, Matt in the comments recommended the Strand reading, which is on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, great example.
That's a great one. I think that like it's a really nice way to familiarize yourselves with him. I know there's been so many people that have been reading his work this year and just have been like, holy, oh my gosh, you know, and it's just, I don't even know how to explain it. It's not like it's something that's completely out of trends in writing. You know, there were words we used at times to describe it that seem really outdated, whether it was metafiction or these days how people talk about autofiction, and it seems really outdated and things like that. You could call it, you know, experimental realism, or, you know, you could call it sort of like stream of consciousness, hysterical realism. All these terms come in and out of fashion. I just think Steve would have just been like, whatever, in a way, to hear. It wasn't like he wasn't aware of it, but I think he knew that it had limited purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, in the Savage Detectives, I think they're the visceral realists, and I think of my dad's writing as visceral realism.
Yeah, I think that's a good term as any, you know. It's just someone is asking, can I ask if there's a moment that Antonia and Sophia can recall first really understanding the reach of their father's writing? Great question.
The reach.
Like, when was there a moment where you were like, holy shit, my dad is one of the biggest authors in American history? I guess I think that's what the question is there, kind of, right?
I feel like there was, well, I think it was a sort of slowly dawning recognition for me. I started to find that a lot of my friends' boyfriends read my dad's writing. I was like, your boyfriend too? So there was, I was like, so many like, you know, brainy young writer men were reading him. And it was, I think at first I'd be surprised when someone you know, sort of several steps away from me was deeply familiar with his work, and then, and then less surprised as time went on. I think, I don't want to speak for you, but it feels like maybe when you went to Hopkins, there was also a moment. I was
thinking of that. Yeah, I think when I went to Hopkins, I was in the writing seminars, and it was, I mean, he was like a reason that a lot of people had chosen to go there, and that was a real kind of like wake up.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah, and then and Matt's reminding us, of course, we also were around when he was nominated for the National Book Award a couple of times. So there was a sense, you know, there was an awareness that his writing was, you know, being read.
I think I was just like, but why are you guys so dressed up?
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess as kids, you don't quite take in the largeness of that sort of thing.
I think about the Charlie Kaufman anecdote, and I'm always like, does he like that anecdote? Does he? Because I think he told me it. Yeah, it was like, so if you guys don't know Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, you should. That was like a hit Charlie Kaufman film. It was like, or Charlie Kaufman script rather, and it was, who directed it? I can't even remember. Who directed it? Someone's gonna tell me.
Spike Jonze who directed
it? Spike Jonze, of course. Spike Jonze. Oh my God, my memory. Yes, it was definitely Spike Jonze. And so there was and you guys can look up the script really easily now. It's really easily available online. I was always trying to find it back then. And they were passing around a copy of, was it Gould? now I can't remember which book it was that they were passing around. They were passing around one. It might have been Frog, actually. Michel Gondry. Oh, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you, Brett. It was Michel Gondry. Okay.
It was the play and other stories, a pretty obscure collection.
Wow. So that was like very central to the love story, actually. And I think both like Charlie Kaufman and everybody, I think I could just say we were all disappointed that it didn't make it into the final cut of the movie. But it's there in the script, which I think in some ways gets read as much as the movie gets seen these days, because it's such a brilliant script. And I think that is like another really magical, touching thing.
Yeah. That was a disappointment for our dad. He got tipped off by a student that it was in the script, and so I saw the film on opening night and had to tell him that it did not make it into the final.
You had to tell him, so it was for you?
Miss.
Oh.
He was always he maintained his fandom of Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah.
He would always watch all of his films that came
There
out.
was a loyalty.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard from Charlie Kaufman at all in the aftermath now? I'm sure he's aware that it would be interesting, Matt, for you to contact Charlie Kaufman. Maybe you've already tried, but that might be a great part of the biography, because I think he was such a massive fan. And I think what was cool, I felt permission to be more obsessed with Charlie Kaufman because I knew Steve liked him. So I was like, okay. And then I remember I saw one of his movies that I didn't love. I think it was Synecdoche, New York or something. And I couldn't get through the film. And I thought, I have to for Steve. Or something. But I don't know how he would have felt about it. It's just so funny. It's like, I'm making it really sound like there was a cult of Steve, but in the best way there was. Like, in a cult, low-key cult, right? Like, a true love.
Oh, Matt says he's tried to contact Kaufman.
Oh, great. Yeah, that I might have some ideas for you, Matt, in a way to do that. I think I know someone that's worked for him. My friend Brett here in the comments might have some ideas too. Any other questions? I'm just rushing this only because Instagram Live might cut us off. So I just want to make sure that like anyone else who and Sophia and Antonia, if you guys have any things, or if Matt, you want to email me anything now, I can also add it. But I think the thing we really should do, if you guys are willing, we can be a little club, a little dog and pony show again, and we can feature you, Matt, and whether McSweeney's can give us a space, or I'm happy to do it on mine too, and have you guys come in at a time that's good for you too, and we can talk about that, because that's a real treat.
Yeah, I think that would be great, and that would be such a, if people have questions about our dad's process and life, Matt is the person to ask. So wonderful.
that would be so lovely. Is there anything that you guys feel like, this is a weird question, but if you feel like if someone were to say, like, I didn't get to meet your dad, but I'm reading his work and I'm really loving it, and where should I begin?
Yeah.
Where would you guys say?
That is such a good question. You have an idea?
I think he would say Frog, but it's enormous.
Really big.
That was like always his answer.
Yeah.
As far as I remember.
I think,
But maybe we would have a different answer.
He gave out a lot of frogs.
Yeah.
I really love Quite Contrary, an early book, and I think that could be a great place to start. I mean, I read it right after he died, and I think the narrator was the same age, more or less, as I am, and it was really lovely to encounter this kind of younger iteration of my dad. So I would I'd recommend Quite Contrary also, and I think he was very proud of that one.
Yeah.
But but that's a very old one. So.
Yeah. Hi, Muffy. I also I think the later stories are so wonderful, and I think he was also quite proud of them, like late stories. I think that could be a lovely place to start.
The collection, Late Stories.
Yeah. Wow, Muffy, did you ask that question at the same time that I asked that? That's kind of, again, psychic weird things are happening that I do not know how to answer that. I didn't even see that until now. Amazing. Yeah, I feel like eventually I made it through, I would say 70%, maybe 80% of his writing. It's an incredible body of work. You know, I don't even know what the final number is exactly of how many short stories and how many novels and like how many things there are that we still haven't seen. But it's like, do we know that?
There's two, a novel and a collection that are not published that he left finished.
Oh,
and yeah, Matt's chiming in. They're also good, and it's really true. It's you can really start anywhere. Gould is also a good place to start. I've given many Goulds out to the people in my life. That's a lovely one.
I'd say people don't be intimidated by the length of the books too. They go quite fast because they're very the momentum of the sound of it will carry you through it. You won't be stopping, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's I want to make sure McSweeney's. Have I said all the things I need to for you? I want to make sure I get that too. If you guys any other final thoughts or questions or
no,
I don't know. This is so nice.
It's so nice. It's such an honor, and I just love, you never know how people will feel about it, and I just, you guys were so sweet about like my pathetic efforts to honor your dad. Like, I just felt like whatever I do, I just, it's like too hard sometimes to do well enough, but I just felt, I hope we can continue to have like, to talk to you because it's just a special treat. So
yeah, it's really a treat for us too. We really loved your introduction, and it was, I mean, as Antonia said so well, it was so moving to read it when we were really grieving, and to just recognize how many people knew and loved him and were touched by him. So we really are very grateful to you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for doing that memorial in Brooklyn, and Joseph and everyone who did that. And it was such a great thing to be part of. For a lot of us, it was the last event right before the pandemic.
Yeah,
was that kind of for you guys too?
Joey.
Yeah,
amazing.
I was just putting photos up on my Instagram of that, and I realized so many people were writing saying that was the last thing they did. And I feel so happy that we could be there together in person. And maybe the thing we need are more like a series of tributes, because it's just been amazing to see more and more people discover the work. It's funny, I'm McSweeney's right now, but I don't know what there is a code that my computer's being terrible, so I'm sorry I failed McSweeney's, and I think there is a discount code that is being offered for this issue, but I will add that to my Instagram, which is PCHDA. You don't have to follow me permanently, you guys, if you don't want to. I'm an annoying poster, but I will make sure to get that info from McSweeney so I can make that available for you, because I know money is, I'm sure. That was another thing, by the way.
Here it is. Wood carving.
Oh, yeah. Wood carving. Wood carving is the code you can use for, is it 25% off or 30% off?
I don't know.
You need it.
20.
I'll clarify that, you guys. I'm so sorry. My computer, this is Steve, I think, has messed with my technology, so I can't. We'll figure it out. But thank you all for being here. I'm going to make sure to save this so we can share it with people who can't be there, because I know several of Steve's students and his friends wrote me and said, like, if it can be saved. So I'm going to make sure to get that right. And then Matt, we'll make sure to, we'll all email and gather ourselves and figure out a time that we can feature you without technical difficulties. And all of you guys who are in the audience, we'd love to have you come back. And so we can do that. And this is just, I don't know, I love it. So I thank you all so much. And I hope Sophia and Antonia, I hope I didn't talk too much.
No,
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 not at
it
all.
was so
Okay.
great. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's so lovely to talk with you.
Yeah. Thanks,
It's,
everybody.
thank you all, and have a wonderful evening. I'm now scared to hang up because I'm like, will I save it right? I will do it somehow. Okay, I'll post it. Okay, thank you so much, McSweeney. I'll post the story after. Thank you so much, Matt. We're so sorry that we couldn't get you in here. We're going to get you properly in here next time. And thank you to everybody who's Steve's students who's in the I saw a lot of you guys. So just, it's really a good time. Let's all be there for each other and like carry on this legacy. So love you all. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good night. Stay safe, everybody. Be cautious. Like, take care. Okay, I'm going to try to get it. I'm going to hit the live and make sure I do this right. I'm so McSweeney's. I know you're in the audience. I'm gonna hit. It's the usual thing I think on your account. When I click off, it's gonna ask me to say thank you so much for saying sweet things in the comments. You're all wonderful. I'm gonna hit off, but I think it's gonna tell me the usual thing to save, right? If I just hit the like little X. Let's see. Let's pray. My gosh. Okay, it's just saying, do you want to end the video? But will that also give me an option to save? I tried it. Will the second screen say save? So weird. Why a verified account would have weirder things than the regular? Okay, I'm gonna try to hope.